don't have peace, not real peace. You've been surviving inside a storm for so long that you've started calling it normal. A silent chaos lives within you, a constant pulse of thoughts, doubts, fears, and invisible pressure that never lets you rest. Emotions hit you without warning, sadness that comes out of nowhere, restlessness you can't explain. And worse than feeling all this is believing that this is just how life is supposed to be. They made you think peace is for a select few, that only monks, gurus, or the extremely lucky can feel truly calm. The rest? We just cope. We survive. We try not to fall apart. But that's a lie you've swallowed without chewing. Inner peace isn't perfection. It doesn't mean living without problems. It's not about silencing your emotions or fighting every negative thought. That's just another war. And it's inside you. True peace begins when you stop resisting yourself. When you stop running from what you feel and start listening, not to react, not to control, but just to witness what's going on inside you without judgment. Because the world outside doesn't define your peace, your interpretation does. Two people can live the same event. One breaks, the other grows. The difference? Not what happened, but how it was processed. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that's what's been happening. You think you choose, but it's the wounded child inside you who's been making the decisions. That child absorbed fears, beliefs, and ways of reacting that weren't even yours. They were inherited, modeled, imposed, and now they live in your thoughts, your habits, your pain. But here's the truth. You are not your programming. You're the one who can rewrite it. So here's the question. How long are you going to keep allowing this? Most people never pause long enough to ask. They live on autopilot, repeating old reactions, tripping over the same emotional wounds, pretending it's just how life works. But it's not. As long as you believe life is something happening to you, you'll remain stuck. Real freedom isn't about controlling what happens, it's about transforming how you interpret it. And that's where unshakable peace begins. It's not about rejecting your emotions or running from uncomfortable thoughts. It's about observing them without becoming them. You are not your mind. You are the presence that notices what your mind says. But you've forgotten that. You've been identifying with the storm, not the stillness behind it. And the more you fight your emotions, the more they tighten their grip. Because what you resist grows stronger. When an emotion overwhelms you, don't suppress it. Don't run. Feel it. Sit with it. Let it be there without trying to fix it. That's where it begins to lose power, in your acceptance, not in your resistance. Picture your mind like a river. Try to stop the current and you'll drown in effort. But sit beside it, watch it flow. And you remember you were never the water, you were always the witness on the shore. That's real power. Peace doesn't come when the world calms down. It comes when the world no longer controls what happens inside you. And to reach that, you need presence. You need to come back to now. Not to the past, where old pain keeps replaying. Not to the future, where fear writes false scripts. But to now, this exact breath. This moment that doesn't ask for anything but your attention. Because peace was never waiting in some distant chapter. It lives in the way you choose to experience this one. Your mind will fight back. It will throw memories, fears, and noise at you to keep control. But you are not those thoughts. If you can see the mind as a tool, not your identity, then, and only then, can you truly be free. And emotional freedom is the only thing that really matters. The Stoics knew this long before we did. It's not what happens that breaks you. It's how you respond to what happens. That's the line between a life of peace and a life of suffering. Between living as a victim or living as someone who holds the power within. And once you understand this, really understand it, you become untouchable. Because peace doesn't live in your circumstances. It was never outside of you. It's been buried, waiting for you to stop looking everywhere else, waiting for you to claim it as yours. So let me ask you, will you keep letting the noise of the world decide your inner state? Or are you ready to take that power back? But here's the twist. Real peace isn't just perception. It's also power. Not power over people or over the world. Power over yourself. And that's where most fall short. Everyone wants calm, but very few are willing to do what it takes to earn it. Do you know your greatest enemy? Distraction. And not just social media or the constant noise around you. I mean internal distraction. The inability to sit alone with your own presence without squirming. That restless need to fill every silence, to escape your own stillness. Ever wonder why? The answer is simple, brutally simple. Because in silence, the truth begins to speak. And the truth is uncomfortable. It shows you what you've been avoiding, what you've buried, what you've tried to silence. Most people aren't ready for that truth, so they keep running, filling, escaping. But when the world finally quiets down, your demons start to whisper. And for many, that's more terrifying than any chaos outside. But here's the secret. Real peace only comes when you walk through that silence. Not by avoiding it, not by numbing it with more noise. You must pass through the stillness to find the part of you that doesn't flinch. Because peace isn't the absence of chaos. It's the ability to remain anchored even as the storm rages. That kind of strength only appears when you dare to look inward without filters. And that takes courage. We live in a world that teaches us to stay distracted. Endless consumption, constant validation, the obsession with staying busy. It's all a trap. A clever design meant to keep you numb, comfortable, obedient. Because someone who never pauses, never awakens. Someone who never questions, never reclaims their power. And here's where a deeper truth emerges. Peace is impossible without detachment. Not just from pain, but from the need to control how life unfolds. From the illusion that everything has to go your way in order for you to feel safe. That illusion is the root of your suffering. Look around. Most people are locked in a fight with reality. They want the world to adjust to their desires. They want others to behave a certain way. And when that doesn't happen, they collapse inside. But reality doesn't bend to your expectations. It doesn't care what you wanted. So the question becomes, why keep fighting what is? Why not learn to dance with what's here instead of demanding what's not? This is where real power begins, not in forcing outcomes, but in shifting your focus. You don't control the storm. You control your posture in the rain. That's the art. That's the mastery. Because the moment you let go of control, you stop being a victim of circumstances. You start becoming unshakable. And yes, detachment is hard. It feels like loss at first, but it's not loss. It's liberation. Every attachment to how life should be is a chain you place on your own mind. And until you release that grip, peace will always feel just out of reach. Because as long as your peace depends on something outside of you, it will never truly be yours. It will be a rental, something the world gives you, and something it can take back without warning. And that kind of peace is too fragile to live on. This is where resilience enters the picture, not the kind you see in motivational quotes, not just pushing through. True resilience is deeper. It's the quiet ability to turn pain into fuel and suffering into self-knowledge. Look at those who have truly evolved, who carry unshakable calm in their eyes. They didn't get there because life was easy. They got there because they faced hell and learned to walk through it with open eyes. They weren't protected from darkness. They just stopped pretending it wasn't there. And instead of letting the pain destroy them, they let it shape them. They didn't become bitter, they became aware. That's the difference between someone who drowns and someone who rises, what they do with their pain. And here's the truth most avoid. Peace isn't about avoiding hardship. It's about shifting your relationship to it. Life will hit you. That's not a flaw. That's part of the design. Meditation won't protect you from every loss. Reading won't erase grief. Growth doesn't make you untouchable, but it does make you ready. Because pain is inevitable. But suffering is a choice. And the only thing that separates the two is the meaning you give. You can be broken or you can be rebuilt, but it's still you who decides. Every wound gives you a choice. Use it or be used by it. Most people choose resentment. They replay the story. They feed the bitterness. But others, the ones who wake up, turn that same pain into purpose. Look at nature. Forests burn before they bloom. Diamonds are born through pressure. You are no different. What breaks you today might be what strengthens you tomorrow, if you let it. Eventually, you stop fearing pain. You stop flinching every time life doesn't go your way, because you realize that whatever comes, you have the power to turn it into something meaningful. That shift alone changes everything. But there's still one enemy hiding in plain sight. Identity. Not who you really are, but who you think you are. The version you've built through stories, labels, and the voice of your past. You were told you are a certain way, that you are your history, your wounds, your patterns, and the longer you cling to that identity, the harder it is to change. You've mistaken your survival strategies for your personality. That's why you keep reacting the same way, even when it hurts. That's why you hold on to pain long after it's over, because without it, you don't know who you'd be. And for the ego, the unknown is terrifying. So you stay in your story. You repeat it, justify it, protect it, because even if it limits you, it's familiar. Even if it poisons you, it's yours. But here's the brutal truth. To find real peace, something in you must die. Not your body, not your spirit, but the version of you that's trapped in the past. The one that keeps telling the same old narrative. The one that's more attached to being right than being free. You have to let that version go. And yes, that's scary. Because your ego doesn't want freedom, it wants control. It doesn't want truth, it wants certainty. But certainty is a prison dressed as comfort. Only in uncertainty do you find expansion. When you stop clinging to who you were, you begin to discover who you actually are. Not who the world told you to be, not who your pain convinced you to become. And in that space, where identity dissolves, peace appears. Not because life got easier, but because you stopped fighting yourself. You became fluid, adaptable, unshakable. That's the internal revolution. Life isn't something to conquer. It's a river you must learn to swim in. You can try to control the current, or you can learn to float. Eyes open, fear quiet, heart steady. That choice is everything. So I'll ask you plainly, are you ready to release the story that's kept you stuck? Are you ready to stop treating pain like an enemy and start using it as a tool? That's the line between surviving and living. And yet, most people fall into the same trap, the obsession with control. They think if they master their emotions, predict every move, and plan for every scenario, peace will follow. But it never does. Because control is a mirage. A mental trick you use to feel safe. But life doesn't obey your rules. The world won't perform on command, and people won't follow the scripts you've written in secret. The more you cling to control, the more life slips through your fingers. Look at how most people live. Tense, anxious, constantly rehearsing disasters that haven't happened. Always preparing for the worst, yet never feeling ready. That's the cost of trying to control the uncontrollable. Exhaustion, mental noise, inner war. Because control doesn't prevent chaos, it amplifies it. The tighter your grip, the more fragile your peace becomes. So here's the real work. Stop demanding certainty. Start building trust in your ability to handle what comes. Because peace doesn't grow from control, it grows from surrender. Not weakness. Conscious surrender. Surrender to what is. Not resignation, but recognition. The world doesn't need to bend to your expectations for you to be okay. You just need to remember who you are when things don't go your way. That shift changes everything. You move from resistance to resilience, from panic to presence, and in that space you stop asking the world to give you peace and start creating it from the inside out. Eventually, you stop needing guarantees. You stop chasing a life where everything fits perfectly into place. Instead, you develop something deeper, a quiet certainty that no matter what happens, you'll stay standing. But there's one thing that still pulls you back: fear of the unknown. That fear convinces you that if you just plan enough, calculate enough, prepare for every possibility, you'll be safe. But you won't, because life doesn't care about your blueprint. It was never meant to follow your timeline. The more you resist uncertainty, the more it owns you. Peace begins not when you conquer it, but when you befriend it. The Stoics saw this clearly. It's not things that disturb us, Epictetus wrote, but our judgments about them. The same goes for the unknown. It's not the uncertainty itself, but the story you attach to it. Your mind projects disasters. It imagines loss, failure, rejection, scenarios stitched together from fear, and you believe them. But what if you didn't? What if you stopped treating uncertainty like a threat? What if you saw it as a field of possibility? A space where creativity awakens, where change begins, where the unexpected becomes beautiful. That's where real life happens. Not in control, but in flow. Think about your most meaningful moments, the ones that changed you. How many of them were planned down to the detail? Almost none. The best things came from chaos, from surprise, from not knowing. Growth lives in the places you didn't plan for. Peace lives in your ability to trust that you'll find your way, even when the map disappears. And that trust, it's not built overnight. It grows each time you choose to stay open when fear tells you to shut down. Each time you breathe through the discomfort instead of running. That's how you become unshakable, not by predicting the future, but by facing it. And this is where another truth emerges, one most people avoid. Your inner world doesn't shift because you read something once. It transforms through repetition, through presence, through the way you speak to yourself. Because what's the point of embracing uncertainty if your own mind keeps waging war against you? How can peace grow if every thought you have is a weapon turned inward? This is the silent battle no one talks about. Self-talk. The voice behind your face. The one that judges, compares, punishes. You hear it more than any other voice in your life, and yet you rarely question it. But that voice is not neutral. It shapes everything. If your inner world is made of doubt, self-attack, and criticism, it doesn't matter how calm the world is, you'll carry chaos inside. That's why peace isn't just about meditation or detachment. It's about reprogramming the voice in your head. The words you repeat become your emotional reality. If every mistake becomes self-hate, if every failure becomes proof you're not enough, then peace will always stay out of reach. The war begins and ends with you. But here's the liberating truth. That voice isn't fixed. It's not your essence. It's your conditioning. It echoes childhood. past wounds, social noise, but it can be rewritten. It can be trained to protect instead of attack. And when that shift happens, everything else changes. You stop needing external validation. You stop seeking calm from outside sources, because your thoughts stop being cages and start becoming home. That's real peace, not silence outside, but harmony within. Not a perfect life, but a life where you are no longer your own enemy. So the question becomes, will you keep letting your mind hold you hostage, or will you turn it into your ally? Because the world won't always be kind. But your thoughts, they can be. And once they are, nothing outside can truly shake you. Peace is not something you stumble upon. It's something you build, thought by thought, breath by breath, decision by decision. Every moment you're either feeding your war or feeding your healing. And the difference lies in awareness. People spend years searching outside, looking for answers in books, relationships, routines, even spiritual practices. But the truth has always lived within, and the doorway to it has never been locked, only ignored. Here's the truth few are willing to face. No one is coming to save you. No guru, no quote, no philosophy will walk the path for you. The work is yours. The freedom is yours. And so is the responsibility. The difference between someone who drowns in suffering and someone who rises into peace isn't luck. It's not intelligence. It's not privilege. It's choice. How they respond, what they believe, and whether they take their power back. So let me ask you this. Are you truly willing to do what it takes to find peace? Not just want it, not just admire it, but actually choose it, even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it asks you to let go of who you were. Because peace isn't free. It costs you your attachments, your false identities, your outdated beliefs. It demands that you face your shadows, surrender control, and forgive parts of yourself you've been punishing for years. It asks for presence, for radical honesty, for softness where you once built walls, and for stillness where you once only knew motion. That's why most people don't have peace, not because they can't, but because they won't do the work. But if you're still here, reading this, something in you is ready. You wouldn't have made it this far otherwise. Maybe a part of you, small, quiet, but steady, already knows, already feels the shift. And that part of you is all you need to begin. Peace is shaped by what you allow in your mind, what you release from your grip, and how you choose to frame what happens to you. But most people keep chasing answers outside, not realizing the real transformation happens within. They wait for life to change, for circumstances to shift, for something out there to grant them freedom. But here's the truth that many fear to accept. No one's coming. No one will hand you the peace you're searching for. There is no final teacher, no perfect method, no magical turning point. The moment is already here. The choice has always been yours, and it always will be. The only difference is whether you're ready to take it. The people who live with peace aren't the ones with the easiest lives. They're the ones who stopped waiting, who stopped blaming, who stopped outsourcing their calm. They faced themselves and started rebuilding from the inside out. So the real question isn't, can I have peace? Of course you can. The real question is, will you do what it takes to claim it? Will you do the inner work day by day, no matter how small the steps? Because peace is built, not found. You build it by questioning what you once accepted. You build it by letting go of the narratives that once defined you. You build it by choosing presence over protection. It's not glamorous. It's not easy. But it's real. And the cost of peace will always be less than the cost of a life spent at war with yourself. So ask yourself honestly, have you been waiting for the world to change? Or are you ready to change the way you walk through it? Most people choose the comfort of their patterns over the discomfort of transformation. They stay in familiar chaos, even when it hurts, simply because it's known. But if you've made it this far, it's because something in you is different. Something in you is waking up. You're beginning to see that peace was never a reward handed to the lucky. It's a path carved by choice, a commitment made in silence, a new way of breathing through the noise. And now the challenge stands before you. Will you keep living at the mercy of your mind, reacting to the world like a puppet on strings? Or will you begin, slowly, steadily, to reclaim what was always yours? Not all at once, not with perfection, but moment by moment, as you let go of control, soften into presence, and stop believing everything your fear tells you. That's how peace is built. Quietly, daily, from within. And here's the truth no one says out loud. You don't need to wait. Not for a sign, not for permission, not for the pain to disappear. You can begin right now, with this breath, this thought, this moment. So, if this message touched something in you, let it become more than just a thought. Go to the comments and write, "Peace begins with me. Not for me, not for others, but for you, as a declaration, as a seed." And if you felt something awaken here, subscribe. Not for the algorithm, but because this isn't just another video. It's a quiet revolution, and you're already a part of it. Until next time, choose peace, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Because how you live this moment is how you shape your entire life.